The majority of Americans feel underpaid at their jobs. Now, part of this has to do with inflation. Part of this has people are just feeling underappreciated and overworked and underpaid at the work that they're doing. Now, the question is, how do you fix this problem for you personally? We're not talking about a grand macroeconomic scale of how do we fix this in our society. We're talking about you. If you feel underpaid at your job, how can you fix that? The first thing is you have to understand is, how do companies pay people? They do not pay people based off of how much money they think you need in order to be able to live a decent life. And ironically, companies do not pay you based off of how hard you work, but companies pay you based off of A, how much value that you provide, and B, how irreplaceable you are. The more value you provide and the less replaceable you are, the more money you're going to be able to command. This is why when you hear minimum wage employees, such as fast food workers at McDonald's, complaining that they're not being paid enough, while the CEOs are making so much money, this is a very difficult conversation for employees to win. The problem is, if there are a lot of people willing to work for, let's just say $15 an hour, then you wanting $20 an hour doesn't give the company much incentive to want to pay you more because they can get somebody else who will work for less. Now, what if a bunch of people say, you know what? We're not willing to work for $15 an hour. We're not going to work for under $30 an hour. Now, McDonald's is going to be forced to pay their employees more because they have no other option. If they want to keep the business going, they're going to have to pay their employees more because they have no other option, assuming nobody else takes a job at $15 or $20 or $25 an hour. But now what happens? If they are paying their employees $30 an hour to manage the cash register and make burgers, now the company, McDonald's, is very much incentivized to want to reduce their expenses because they're looking at their balance sheet and their cash flow statement and their income statement saying, well, we have a lot of expenses in our salaries that we didn't have before. Is there a way for us to automate this? Is there a way for us to use technology to potentially reduce some of these expenses? And now all of a sudden, if they have a lot of employees that are commanding 50, 60% more a year in their incomes, that's a large expense for them, which means now they might spend a few $1 billion investing in new technologies, investing in new softwares, investing in new hardwares, investing in new artificial intelligences to hire somebody or a machine or a robot or something to take the orders, and then number two, to make the burgers. Because if they can now reduce their cost by $4 an hour, scaled over the number of stores that they have, that's a huge cost saving for them. And this is where now understanding, many people are upset because they feel like they're underpaid because of how expensive things are. And you're right, things are expensive. It is extremely difficult to be able to survive off of $15 an hour, $17 an hour, $20 an hour. That's a fact. However, there now comes to the point where you have to decide what is the best way to solve this problem. You can A, command your company to pay you more, which could also mean that there's a higher chance of you being replaced if you are not irreplaceable, because if the company can now lower their costs somehow, they're going to find a way to do that. Or B, can you create this income or this wealth yourself? And this is where now it becomes so important for you to become financially educated to be able to take care of yourself, because the reality is it is expensive to survive in today's economy. I'm going to jump back into the video in just 1 second, but before we do, if you are an investor and you're looking for an easy and free way to stay up to date on what's happening in the top financial news, from the economy to the housing market to the stock market to the crypto market to the global economy, then you have to check out Market Briefs. Market Briefs is my free financial newsletter that I created that will keep you up to date on what's happening in the financial news. You can read the newsletter in less than 5 minutes every morning. It's a fun and easy to read email, and it's completely free. So if you haven't joined Market Briefs yet, I got the link to how you can join down in the description below. And even if everybody's wages went up on the lower level, what would that do? Well, then if McDonald's had to pay more money for their employees, not only are they going to be incentivized to now figure out how to replace the employees, but they're also going to charge more dollars for their meals. So now if that applies across the board, now you're going to go shopping and you're going to have to pay more money to buy your stuff too. And this is where it's so important for you to understand now how to take care of yourself financially, because the reality is financial education is one of those things we should have all been taught in school. Because once you leave school, it becomes an emotional argument, because naturally you're going to work, you're working hard, you're struggling to pay your bills, it's not making sense. And then you hear about the CEOs and the shareholders making billions of dollars or millions of dollars a year while you're sitting there struggling how to pay rent. It doesn't make sense. It's screwed up. It's broken. And you're right. And this is where now the important part, the thing that you can control, the thing that you can fix, and the thing that you can turn around is your financial education. Because that's what's going to allow you now to figure out, what do I do with my income? How do I scale my income? And how do I protect and grow my income that way now I have money coming in from my assets instead of just relying on my job? Because I know this job is not going to take care of me. And maybe you can work for a career change. Maybe you can work for a higher income. Maybe you can work for something else that we can make more money. But your income by itself is not going to make you wealthy. You have to do more than just rely on your income. And that is where your financial education comes in, because that's where now you could go out and learn how to invest in assets. Learn how to create cash flow. And of course, if you're only starting off with an extra $2 a day to invest, it's going to take you a long time to see any more success, to see any real results with your cash flow. But it starts with that mindset. You have to believe it's possible for you. Then you work on how do you control your spending. Then you work on how do you create more income. Then you work on buying the assets. It all works in progression, but you have to first believe it's possible for you, because if you don't believe that you can become successful or financially successful, it is going to be impossible. When I first started learning about entrepreneurship and I first started seeing success in entrepreneurship, this is years ago now, I was so obsessed and I was so excited because I finally, for the first time, started making decent money. And if you want to quantify decent money, it was probably $200,000 or $300,000 a year as an entrepreneur from my own